Now let's talk about what, as you analyze that and you look at your profit and loss statement, how do you lower your overhead? And I'm going to talk about, where the boat could be leaking. Imagine that you're in a boat and there's water coming in. There's water coming into the boat. Where's the boat leaking? Where your profitability may be leaking in your practice. For example, if you have a facility cost that is, say, 7% annual, then that's 2% above my benchmark of 5% or less. That may mean that you're not producing enough in order to afford the space that you're in. And the same thing if your wages expenses are high. Your wage expense would mean you're not producing enough to support the team that you have. And while we can all find savings by scrubbing your profit and loss statement, the scrubbing is a useful exercise. And it's something I think every one of our listeners should do. You should quite literally, if you haven't done it in a while, take a look at all of the expenses that go in every one of your, especially those 5 items of expenses, everything that goes in there, and see what you can do to lower that. And oftentimes we find, when I do that exercise with my clients, we often find opportunities to save money, which represents, part of the ways we're going to reduce our overhead. But while I would encourage you to look at that, let me also tell you that there's bigger fish to fry. In other words, there's better approaches to increase your overhead, or increase your profitability, lower your overhead. There's better strategies to lower your overhead. And one of the important things to do is consider a growth strategy. If you can grow your practice with the same team and the same hours, if we can grow your practice, and let me use a round number that makes it easy to do my math, Naren, if we can grow the practice, same team, same hours, the profitability is quite impressive on the growth dollars. Let me walk you through that exercise. And I'm going to use $100,000 because it makes the math easy. Plus, I believe every one of our listeners could grow your practice by $100,000 in collections. And I'm specifically talking about collections here because it's got to be real and collectible. All right, so let's look at that. If we grow your practice with the 2 disclaimers of same team and same hours, then we have to look at your fixed and your variable expenses. Most of your expenses are fixed. Variable expenses are those that change as a result of doing more dentistry. And there's really only 2 categories that will grow as a function of doing more dentistry, assuming same team, same hours. And that would be lab and consumable supplies. Because again, your lab bill is going to go up if you're doing more dentistry, because some of it's going to be lab related. So let's say you're a non-CERAC office and our budget's 8% for lab. So let's use 8% for lab. And then your consumable supplies, because the more materials you use, the more your expenses will go up. And so that budget is 6%. So add that up, Naren. 8 plus 6 is 14%. Now, theoretically, in theory, those are the only expenses that will go up as you do more dentistry if we do it with the same team and the same hours. However, something always seems to creep in there, and somehow other expenses creep up along with it. So I'm going to put a miscellaneous category of 6% because it makes a round number, 14 for lab and consumable supplies, add another 6 to make 20%. And the 20% is just the miscellaneous stuff that seemed to go up. Maybe we use the pillowy soft toilet paper now, and it goes up. So 20% is your overhead on the growth dollars. Remember, we talked about growing $100,000 a year. So you're going to have another $80,000 in net income if we could grow your practice $100,000 a year. That $80,000 additional dollars certainly is going to be welcomed by any of our listeners. That's not, I don't care what neighborhood in, that's a very attractive increase, $80,000. It may not get your overhead, depends where you start at, but it may not get it down to 60%, but you're going to be trending in the right direction, Now, if you'll take a leap in faith with me and let's do it again, let's say you could grow another $100,000. So you're going to grow $200,000 total, same team, same hours. Then you grow, same math again, another $80,000. We add another $160,000 the 80 from the first 100, the 80 from the second 100, straight to your bottom line. Think about that, Aaron. Think about how attractive that is. Not only, giving an extra $160,000 to reduce debt, to invest in your technology, to invest in your CE, perhaps just to pay yourself more. Let it go right down the bottom line and pay yourself a more appropriate way, so you don't feel like that dentist or that doctor that you mentioned in New York that felt like it didn't make sense to own a practice. So one of the best things you can do is you can adopt a growth strategy. And that's exactly what you did in the example that you gave, Naren, of the client of mine that was stuck. Now, he was stuck. When we started together, he was stuck at a pretty good place. He was stuck at $1.4 million a year in collections.
Right.
Solo doc, strong hygiene department. But he said, Gary, I've been stuck here for 4 years. I haven't gotten any increase I tried, but I haven't gotten any. So that's why I wanted to start working with you. And we grew the practice significantly, resulting in another $300,000 in net income to the doctor, a very favorable end result. So I use that as an example, and growth, it speaks to why growth is such a great strategy. The second way that any of you can radically reduce your expenses is to successfully resign from PPO plans. That 45 to 50% you're handing to the fat cats of the insurance company is eroding your profit and loss statement like nothing else. And the sad reality is most of you don't know what you're writing off because you enter your contracted fees, into your fee schedule rather than your UCR fees. And all three major practice management software encourage you to do that. But if you can reduce your insurance dependence, and I'll give you a case study example here. Actual client of mine, I won't use the name, but I'll use the numbers. In 2021, this practice was in network with about 10 PPO plans, 10 PPO plans, the entire year. And in that year, he produced 1.9 and collected 1.4. Had $500,000 in write-offs, and almost all of those write-offs were insurance adjustments. All right. In 2022, by the end of 2021, he was right out of network. He was getting out of network. And when we started 2022, he was completely out of network with PPO plans. In 2022, his office produced 1.8. So his production went down from 1.9 to 1.8 because of the attrition of some patients that left because he was no longer a PPO provider. But he collected 1.7. So Naren, look at that for a minute. So 300,000 from one, from 1.4 to 1.7 in collections, another $300,000 better.
So he's doing $100,000 less in dentistry, but he's collecting 300,000 more. Same team.
And so what happened to his overhead?
His overhead goes down because he's doing $100,000 less in dentistry.
The overhead's now instead of based on 1.9, it's based on 1.8. So some of you might be saying, well, wait a minute, if he's fee for service, Gary, how come he has $100,000 in adjustments? Well, primarily because of his in-office membership plan. I don't like that 10% discount off of the in-office membership plan, but I like it a whole lot better than the 45 to 50% done by the PPO plans. So and look what happened to his profitability in that situation. Went up radically. So the two specific strategies I would encourage you to focus on is growth. You can grow your way through this. And if you're a PPO practice, you can produce your way through this, even with the adjustments, but it's going to mean you have to pedal a lot faster, which may or may not be desirable for you. Or you can reduce your PPO plans. And by reducing the PPO plans and reducing what you're handing off to the fat cats of the insurance, you are increasing your profitability.